Lovely in summer. It was just magical, really. And you only went home when you were hungry.
Hopscotch, hide and seek. Then we used to be mischievous and all. We used to get knocking on people's doors, but we used to get some cotton and tie it to rattle, but not knocker. And then we used to get to the other side of the wall, which were about 10, 15 foot away or 20 foot away. Then we used to be pulling cotton on rattle, and we were hiding behind one, they couldn't see us. Like, of course, when they opened the door, it was, and I thought, what, they never saw cotton, see us, and shut the door again, tick, 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 like that.
When we moved up here, quite easily made friends, played out in the street, that's where you made your friends, playing in the street, playing kick can and hide and seek, and going down to the woods and getting your own catapults. And well, you need the right sort of bough of a tree, Y-shaped, and at that time you could buy, well, what people used to call knicker elastic, but it was a bit thicker than that. Strap it on, and then you'd got your catapult.
Football, rugby, marbles, that brought back memories. We used to play in the gutter and try to move the marbles around bricks and things like that were in the gutter. And you had to get as close as you can to certain things that you put down, and if you didn't, you lost your marble to the person you were playing. So you started with a marble, and if you were lucky, you got 2 or 3, and it built up from there. I can't really remember going out and buying marbles. You could buy them, and I dare say somebody, you ask your parents if they could get you some marbles, but I can't actually remember going into a shop and actually buying marbles. You accumulated them by stealth.
They sort of were swapped daily, you know. You might have won one day, but they got them back the next and things like that.
Yeah, well, we had, again, at the bottom of the street was pollard bearings. Obviously, we went in there and begged a few off the staff that worked there, and if they weren't of the standard, they used to give you a few ball bearings.
I mean, at my granddad's, I always remember when I used to come here, he used to have a big whip and top, which you don't see nowadays, and he had one, and it was massive. It must have been 2 inches across, probably more, and quite big. And I couldn't do it with a leather. They used to give it with a leather, I said I couldn't do it. I used to have an old shoelace, and I used to get shots and jaw patterns on. And I would dab hand with that one. I used to love it. I could play for hours with it. Even though it was simple, it was good.
Cal, I think, tops, whip and top. Oh, I loved that. Something like that, doing different patterns on the top. Yeah, it was great, that. And hide and seek, skipping, played out in the street, of course, until dark, and then you had to go in when it was dark. And the rag and bone man used to come. He had a roundabout. Horse pulled it, like a horse and cart, but it was a roundabout. And he'd come up our street and he'd be shouting, penny a ride, or whatever. You could take him a bundle of rags and you could have a ride, or pay a penny. And then he'd move on somewhere else. That was amazing.
In the summer months especially, we'd be outside and we'd be playing these games like what we used to call kick-off can. It was just an empty can which you used to throw away. Somebody would go fetch it and put it on the floor, and you were to be found, or the first one back to touch the can, they'd be there, so they hadn't to go chasing off the can the next time. Going back in the early 50s, there weren't many cars about on Ayton Road. And we used to play a game called British Bulldog, getting from one side of the road to the other. Well, Ayton Road, there was one person who had a car at that time. So there were no cars, or very, very, very few cars. So we used to play actually on the main road.
I remember having a scooter and a 3-wheeler bike when I was very little, and then as I got older I had a nice bike, a 2-wheeler. I wasn't very good on it, but we used to go all over, you know. You'd take off with a sandwich and a drink and you wouldn't come back for the day.
Push bikes, usually second-hand ones that have been knocked together by the parents. And well, I was lucky. I had a lightweight racing bike, fixed wheel, no gears, which meant that you couldn't stop pedalling, you had to keep pedalling. I'd sit up and beg bikes, really heavy things. You were lucky if you had one with Sturmey Archer gears on, three-speed thing on the back wheel. But we used to go all over on them. When I was about 13, I was cycling to York. You could stop at anyone's house for a drink of water. They'd give you on the run, you know, thinking, what they up to, missed you. None of that sort of thing. Good old days, as they called them.
It was, I think, in 1947 when the snow laid about for quite some time. I remember as a child, snow piled up at the side of the road for a long time.
You guarantee that it snow from November to probably March. Deep, really deep. I can remember it coming up to your knees some days. But you still have to go to school. They didn't shut school now they never shut the school.
Well, you'd look through a window and you're looking about a good foot and a half of snow on the ground. And I remember going out into the street and we were building snow walls about 5 foot high, you know, about 8 inch wide, and somebody at the other end of the street having snowball fights with him. You've probably heard people say, well, you don't get snow like you used to do. And it's true, we don't get snow like you used to do. It's like, how can I put it? Everybody wanted to be outside.
Going to the cinema at Street House on Saturday and coming home, and my mum had just baked some scufflers out the oven. Oh, Mum, can I have one? No, not until they're cold, they're too hot yet. And then when she were doing the cakes, I'd say, Mum, can I go to the shop for a bun? She's no, I've made some cakes. You know, and it's funny, isn't it? You'd have preferred one from the shop, but no, I'd give my right arm to have one of her cakes now. Yeah, I would. Lovely times. And I used to go into my auntie's, which were next door, and she had a piano, and I used to love to tinkle on that piano. Yeah, and they got television before we did, so I used to go in there and watch the TV.
Yes, it was a tradition, I think, with everybody. Then days, you always got new clothes at Whitsuntide, which what, spring bank holidays now, isn't it? Yeah. Yes, we always went and got some new clothes. And then we go to the fair and have a nice good day. And probably go then to my grand's for us tea. It was great growing up. Remember going to my grand's down Castleford to Bridgefoot, just before Loch Lane there. And she always had wash tub out and ring her doing her washing because there's no hot water.
I've been Castleford Rugby League Queen when I was younger. How I won it, I don't know. Queen of Queens and Airedale Festival Queen. And I went in San Martin one night, I was 15, and the people that were the judges, they just happened to say to me, do you want to enter this competition? So I says, I can't, I'm underage, I can't do it. But you can, we'll put you down as 21. So I won it. And the girl that comes second grassed me up because she comes second. But I still got my sash, I still kept my title and everything. When I wore the Airedale Festival Queen, I won that at the local youth club. And I had to ride round Airedale on a milk float, dressed in a red velvet dress and a little crown thing on my head.
The other games that we've played were like, we had a massive street water fight. That went on for hours. I think it went on from, midday till around about 9:30, 10 o'clock. Neighbours started coming out. Your parents are on phones to each other, and some of them are whistling to each other down the street, and it's like, oh, you might as well pull out a couple of chairs, we'll keep an eye on kids, blah blah blah. I think I saw like 3 or 4 picnics going on where mums and dads were watching everything that were going on, and honestly it was just absolutely wonderful. It was. It were a memory I will treasure for the rest of my life. It were brilliant. Probably one of the best days I've ever had as a kid.
And this was growing up and having fun, and it was lovely. It just was so nice to be in a village like, and everybody loved you to bits. Nobody opened the door, locked the door, or anything like that, and it was really good.
Yeah, but lovely times growing up.
Really enjoyable they were, them days. I won't swap them anyway. I wouldn't. Really enjoyed them. Yeah.
It's a different thing, it's coal mining. There's a camaraderie, because you went down, you really didn't know whether you were coming out or not.
I think it was set out for me to work at the pit. There was just something about working underground that appealed to me. You know, it just seemed a different adventure to go where nobody else, or not the majority of the people, could go.
I went down the pit at 15. That was in 1969, and I got made redundant in 1992.
And there were all the collieries. There was Fryston, Welldale, Alton Bywater. There used to be Primrose out at Great Preston, Princeton. There was one at Whitwood, Prince of Wales.
From our house you could see out pit wheel and everything, and the conveyor belt. And you could hear buzzers going, start at shift on the morning about 6 o'clock or whatever. Could set your clock by it. Not so much at night time, it was just morning.
And on a morning I used to go into the pit canteen to get a wafer bar, and it was called Terry's Wafer. And when you went in, everybody knew everybody, so all miners and that were in canteen used to shout, "Morning Barbara," and things like that.
And you could go and get a meal at the pit. They did meals at about 8p and 10p.
And obviously at pit, if you had an accident or you broke your arm or you cut your leg, parents used to take you to ambulance room and they'd pass you up, and they used to say, "Right then, she needs to go to hospital."
And every Friday, all the young lads, it cost a penny, and we all used to get in the shower at the pit when there were no collies about, but everybody in the village, and there maybe be 25 of us, 26, when I've reckoned up, and we all used to go pay a penny, and all we did was act about with hose pipes and whatever.
My dad worked there, my uncles, both my granddads. At the time, my dad didn't want me to go to the college, wanted me to do something else, but he says, if you do, he says, get yourself a trade. So I did apply for the electrical apprenticeship. You did every job on the pit top.
And I had to do 16 weeks training, underground training in the training galleries. I did my fixed 16 weeks training. What happens then when you've done your 16 weeks training, you go deeper into mine and you work with the miners. And what you do, they send you to a certain miner where you do 20 days, what you call close supervision. And then what they did, they sent me with bricklayers, underground bricklayers. I did my 20 days there, and I stayed with bricklayers and became a bricklayer for 15 years of my 23 years I worked there.
We got this harness on, and the shaft man come. I says, "What we doing?" He said, "We're going in pit shaft." I says, "You're joking?" He says, "No, we're running the cable down." And we were putting cleats in for cable down 550 yards. So I got on top of the cage, with all the, what they call them, the shackles, that held the cage together. So I got on there, it went 200 yards down, hit this gong with this hammer, and cage stopped. It was bouncing for 5 minutes. 200 yards, then it says, "Go over there and get on in the shaft side, off of the cage." So I had to go and sit on these big wooden guide blocks, and then he left me. I was sat there, chained up, and I looked at top, and it was like a 6p with the light at the top of the shaft. And when he came back up, I couldn't get back on. It took me maybe 10 minutes to be able to, and I had to stand on the box, giving me harness, cable what were on. So I was stood there, no protection, and he clipped me on, and then we brought me back up.
the belts, the sound of belts at coal, and where you'd get a belt running and it'd go down a chute, the noise of the coal going into the chute, because it were going on to another belt to get it out of the pit. There was that sound. Apart from that, there was no sound. It was just quiet, apart from men working. But when you got near the coal face, where they were cutting the machine were cutting the coal, you could hear the sound of the machines. But if you were outbound, it was just quiet, just like walking down a tunnel.
But also the darkness, there's nothing to compare darkness down a coal mine. You know, even if you're in the middle of nowhere, the moon's not out, there's cloud cover, there's still shafts of light. You know, you can still see. But underground, if all the lights are out, you could literally poke yourself in the eye if you moved your hand towards your face.
Oh, it was noisy, but the faces I worked on, it were only about 3 foot spaces. That's you're crawling on your knees for 300-400 yards a time, and you were on your knees all day long.
Yeah, I could remember my dad doing double shifts, coming home for his tea, having his tea, then going back to the pit. Well, when my dad used to come in, sometimes, he didn't have time for a shower, he used to go upstairs and it just used to be like black sludge in bath. And, he used to always take a pot bottle of tea, black tea, that, with him, because of dust.
I remember the pit baths had a really distinctive smell about them, of soapy cleanness, and the lockers were fascinating as well. In the old pits, you'd got silver lockers, a bench to sit on or stand on if you had a top locker. Unfortunately, I had a top locker, and one of the old miners, I ended up on the same shift as. He used to get a bit fed up of me trying to climb above him and get into the locker. But one day he tried to push me into it. If failed, it was just a bit of fun at the end of the day, but I thought I'll try and get myself there at a different time to this guy.
Yes, miners' strike. We were on days. We got to pit bottom, and one of the union lads was stood there. He said, "You're all on strike tomorrow." We did a little bit, but nothing definite. And then he said, "Right, you're on strike. There's a meeting at Fryston Club tonight. All get down there." So our pit went down. Told us we were on strike because they were shutting our pits down. And that's what the lads thought it was going to be, a 2 or 3 week strike. And a week rolled into 2, 2 rolled into 4, 4 rolled into 6. Before you know, we were on strike 12 months. I believe it was Corton Wood, the first one they were shutting. So we all went from there as pickets.
It were bad with miners' strike. Even on picket lines, you got chased by police. I lived in a flat on my own. I used to have to go to soup kitchens because there were no money coming in. The women that did the soup, they were brilliant. The women cooked bread and stuff like that. There was a church outside Alton Bywater Colliery. You could go down there and get a food parcel. The community were just all together. Everybody did everything for it, If somebody wanted short, right, we'll get you this, don't worry about it. Everybody looked after everybody.
And I'm proud to say that I picketed from day one to the very last day of the strike. And then the end of the strike, we'd been on strike for 12 months. We all marched down behind Fryston Kazoo Band. But the lads at the pit didn't want to go back. The majority of the lads said, "No, we're not going back." But the union at Fryston had decided we were going back. And they didn't have a mandate to say that we'd go back. But they took us back.
My name's still down there because when I used to brick a stopping up, a gate end, with mortar war, I used to put Billy Brick was here and put the date on. So I can't see anybody going back down there now because it's not there, it's all been filled in. But if anybody did, shine the torch, and it's Billy Brick was here in 19 so-and-so. Yeah.
Underground, the dangers were incredible, so somebody had to watch your back. You'd watch each other's, you looked after one another underground. You'd have a laugh and a joke, and there was some really...
That pit you never thought about, well, I'm this far down. It just comes natural. You don't realise whereabouts you actually are. You know what I mean?
The best camaraderie I've had was when I worked at pit, and you saw more of your workmates than you did of your family.
I loved it. Down pit, it was just like one big happy family. You know what I mean? It was fantastic.
The camaraderie down pit were unbelievable. And yeah, I loved it. I'd be back tomorrow if I could. At pit.
About cinemas, there were Albion Cinema at top of Castleford, which turned into a nightclub. There were Star Cinema, which were down where the wharf is, where the bridge is now. Back on.
When I lived over Loch Lane, the Star Cinema was just at the bottom of town, so you just cross over the river bridge and go up to the Star Cinema. And we always used to go, I won't say every week, but on a Saturday matinee it was. And I think it cost us sixpence. There were cartoons and there'd always be a feature film, which I'm not sure, I can't remember that. But what I loved was the interval, and the usherettes used to come with a big box and this ribbon over the back, and there'd be tubs of ice cream and little plastic cartons of orange called Kiora Orange. That was my favourite. I used to love the Kiora and having a little tub of ice cream. And
yeah, with the Star, if I remember right, it had a balcony, and it was £1 shilling and 11 pence to go in the stalls downstairs, and it was 2 and 6 to go upstairs. So I always used to go downstairs. Unlike the modern cinemas with multi-screens and you can book in advance and things, you had to queue up. And I can remember my sister trying to take me to when The Sound of Music came out with Julie Andrews in it. I think it was the third night we eventually managed to get in. We had to queue up, and then we said, sorry, it's fault, go away. So we had to queue up 3 times to see The Sound of Music.
The cinemas, you could smoke, you'd go in, and I remember it being dark. Did you come in from the back? And then it was like, you'd split into 2 halves, and there were like the smoking side, and there were like the non-smoking side. But obviously if you sit on a non-smoking side, you're still getting the smell from the smoking side. And there used to be like an interval as well in cinema. And they'd stop you and you'd get an ice cream halfway through, and then the cinema would start back up again afterwards.
Oh, I can remember it. They used to have curtains, like these velvet curtains that were like concertinaed. Before the film started, the curtains would go up to reveal the screen.
Oh yeah, the bit I used to like as well was the Pearl and Dean adverts. Pearl and Dean must have been like an advertising agency that had a contract with every cinema, and there were certain things, national ones like Benson Hedges cigarettes. They used to advertise cigarettes and pictures at one time. There were some good ones, but it's when they did the local ones that it used to crack me up. The one I can always remember is Malcolm Ellis was an optician's up Sager Street, and they used to say, if you need new glasses, go to Malcolm Ellis in Castleford. Yeah, obviously wasn't made by a local person at all. It was always Castleford. I keep saying cinema. It's not. We went to the pictures. We didn't go to the cinema. We went to the pictures. Yeah, none of this cinema stuff.
Speaking of Castleford, it's known for the rugby team. They'd won trophy, something like in 69, 70, and they paraded through streets at Castleford, and we walked at end of Smawthorne Lane. He'd got me a rosette and a little flag, and we watched the team bus come round, and then the
black paraded team and trophy on the roof.
Yeah, they were on top of the
everybody
roof
in the grounds.
So everybody came into the
Cheering.
park onto the grass pit and cheering and watching them all out trophy.
That was 69. That.
And because my grandma's was right up near the boys' modern, and most of the players from then used to go to the boys' modern, and so that's where they paraded the cup into the boys' modern itself. I'd never seen anything like it before. First time I'd ever seen something like that. It was noisy because they'd be papping their horn, wagons would be papping their horns and this, that and other, and there'd be sometimes some music on.
A lot of the times while I was at school, in them days the touring sides used to play the local sides. So you got Australia, were a very good side in them days, they still are. They played down at Castleford, and I can remember bunking off school one Wednesday afternoon. They wouldn't let us off, and you'd think they'd close the school, but there were that many bunked off. I think the detention hall were full the following day because they knew where everybody had gone. But in them days, I mean, you were talking maybe 20,000 watching a match.
I worked in two dress shops in Carlton Street. One were called Miss Siamers and the other one were called Gossip. And all girls on a Friday used to finish at Burberry's at dinner time, and they all used to pile in and buy all their outfits for weekend and stuff. It were great. Yeah, well, you always knew that you were going to be busy at dinner time on a Friday, and you knew everybody. You know, you just knew them all. So it was fun trying to fix them up with outfits and things like that. Yeah.
Carlton Street, they used to have pubs all the way up Carlton Street. We used to start at the Feathers, all in there, and we did what you call a pub crawl. You had your first drink in there, and then you come out, all in next one, then it next one, next one. And then when you got to top of Carlton Street, you went to a pub where it had disco music in and all that. You used to get stamped, and that called the Maestro. And it used to go in there, and then when it closed, some of us used to go around to what we call the Acme Fish Shop, have fish and chips, and then go into Escapades nightclub and be in there well 2 o'clock in the morning, and then just walk home. It was lovely, brilliant. But you had some laughs and jokes and whatnot.
Going down the pit, obviously after day shift we'd wander into Castleford. Like we'd probably start off at the bottom end of Castleford where the Prince of Wales was, and make us way up the street. I particularly like the lamplighter, which was it the White Hart then.
We never used to get as far as that.
And then we'd end up at Horse and Jockey. It used to be probably the last one that we had a drink in. And then it used to be a decision: do you go home on the last bus or do you go to the nightclub, the Kiosk?
The dance place, that was the main thing, was the kiosk. It was a sprung floor. Yeah, and everybody went.
Glitter ball in the middle.
Yeah, yeah. You learnt to bop.
I once went with my friend. He had a sprung dance floor, so you could feel it. It wasn't a lot of bounce, but it was bouncing with the floor.
In Kiosk, that were there when Escapades were open. You could either go in Escapades or Kiosk. You went up steps into Kiosk and you got a stamp. So you could come out and go back in with your stamp. I liked Escapades better because it was a lot bigger.
Everybody used to go, which were the Kiosk in Castleford. You could go on a Saturday afternoon, and basically it was for kids from 10-year-old to about 16-year-old. I mean, it was just a bit after the cinemas had shut down, what they call the afternoon matinee, but they had the Kiosk where you could go on a Saturday as a kid, 10 to 16-year-old, then 16 to wherever on a Thursday night, and on a Saturday night I think it was a Kiosk. So
on with the church choir, and then eventually joining the male boys choir, which I'm still there. 62 years later, we went down to the Albert Hall to take part in the Messiah, and we did that for 14 years. So that was a wonderful experience, and to be with, say, the London Philharmonic Orchestra, to sing with them. Oh, that was tremendous, that night, really was. And to sing down at the Albert Hall again with 1,000 Yorkshire voices, supposedly. That was absolutely tremendous.
But everybody made you welcome. People in Castleford were brilliant. They were lovely people.
Castleford, oh, it was a busy shopping place. Outdoor market were good. You could get everything. Lots of things you didn't want to know.
I used to come into Castleford. It used to be a booming town. You know, there was lots of different shops. There was a really, really good market. The market used to open 4 days a week, and it was always packed.
Me and my wife used to go to shopping in Castleford. We liked the indoor market.
It was the old market hall, that big open space now. Those stalls were always full, and you had everything on those stalls. You know, you had food, fruit and veg, things like that. You had people selling clothes. You could pick up some nice things there.
A big draw because it was so good. You could get everything in there. Wool shops, book shops, cafes. There were just general shops in the first part, and then you go down to the bottom end towards the side, and that was the fruit and veg market and the fish market as well. So as I say, you could just go in there and get everything that you wanted.
I used to go because you could get cheap wool to knit the kids' clothes, cardigans and whatever, and jumpers for my husband. You could get the big bags that needed winding up with all sorts. You could get this, used to weigh it for so much, and used to be probably a couple of shillings, 3 and 6 or half a crown or something like that. I used to get this big bag that you could knit 2 or 3 cardigans out by the time you roll it up in big hanks, and you just put them round your chair or got somebody to hold them, and then you could set all that out there and wrap it, you know, and make your balls before you started knitting. So that was one of the best things for Castleford Market you could get, and that was outside.
One of the outside stalls was a chap called Mad Harry. He sold everything, but it was sort of an auction. He could have pans, plates, clothes, towels, everything. All these things piled up, and he would auction them off. How much are you going to give me for this? And he would say, right, not £5, not £4, not £3, not £2, £1 only if you buy this today. And people would be putting their hands up, you know, saying, and he sold all sorts in that way. But it was a big draw because it always had a big crowd.
Woolworths was next door to the market, because the market was there. Not working at Woolworths, and I remember seeing that, all the different things they sold. Amazing, yeah. There was like counters, and everything's open there. It wasn't self-service. Everybody, if you wanted sweets, it had to be weighed for you. You didn't do that yourself. Once packaged, it was all loose.
Getting the bus from Pontefract to Castleford bus station, and then getting the bus to Temple Newsom Park in 1981. But I always remember the bus station as being like, you know, really sort of basic, and now it's like state of the art one, isn't it? But it was just like sort of what do you call it, balustrading or something. That's all I remember. There's like rows of roads where the buses all parked, and I remember once coming back from being a gardener, and I fell asleep in the bus, in the bus station. I woke up, I thought, flipping out, where am I?
Vivid memories of when we'd had a lot of rain and the river was getting higher and higher, and I know my mum used to get worried of how high the river was getting, because the water, when it was getting higher and higher, used to seep into the cellar. But when it did get high, and it was getting higher, it used to creep up the cellar steps, and you would be, every so often my mum would go into the pantry and have a look at the situation and see how far the water was coming up the steps. Fortunately, it never got higher than maybe the third step before it became up into the pantry. It never got as high as that. But it was quite an experience, and it was quite frightening at times. So, obviously, the River Aire then, it was very dirty because all the industry further up the River Aire and all the woolen mills, especially the woolen mills, all the chemicals and everything, one thing and another, were all pouring into the river.
From my memory, it did happen quite regular. For many years, it was known as the Foamy City, in our locality anyway.
Whatever it was way back up towards Leeds. And I suppose it was from the mills, I don't know what they used to use, and then you used to come to the weir in Castleford, and because of the water splashing over the weir, it caused it to foam, and it was like a great big soap suds, just like if you put some soap powder in a bowl or something and stir it, that's what it was, and it just used to be all over the place.
So the foam is at Castleford, where as you go over that new bridge they built for the millennium, and well, you couldn't see water in them days, for back in the 60s and 70s, even the 80s. But it used to come down, obviously down the river, because it's the river from Castleford to Ferry Bridge, and then it splits back into the River Aire, which goes over the Brotherton side, and the canal comes back through Nottingley. I can't honestly say I've ever seen it in canal, but I've certainly seen it at the Ferry Bridge locks and in the River Aire.
But just bubbles, just everywhere, and like floating air, and people got it in the air, and literally you're like to dodge around it. And I used to want to kick him, and he used to drag me out. Don't kick it, you'll get covered in foam, you'll get stained and whatever. But yeah, I mean, it used to be, like obviously we got this side, and then on the main road on Eyre Street and stuff, that's where it used to be bad, coming down there. I think it did actually. I think, yeah, there was kind of smell with it, but it was one of those, it wasn't pleasant, but it wasn't like there was smell, but it wasn't said it stunk or anything like that. It was just like a background odour sort of thing, rather than a smell like it.
It actually did. If you ever got on your clothes by some accident, it always used to leave a black mark where it had landed, and that was obviously all the nastiness, all the chemicals. So
I'll just reel a few off. There used to be a string of shoe shops. They were owned by the family. They were called Hoptons. They had, I think they had 3 different shops up and down Carlton Street, and there was also Nicholson's Jewellers. The thing that I do remember as well is that there were 2 different co-op stores in Castleford. Mm-hmm. There's the one where the market is now, the indoor market. That was a co-op building, and I can remember going in there with both my nana and my mother. And it was, the really old-fashioned one with just a bare wooden floor, and it wasn't a supermarket. It was, you went to the counter, and I can still remember all the bacon hanging up and things like that. And then the other co-op, which was further up Carlton Street, that was more clothing and things like that. And
what my favourite shop was as a teenager, there was a record shop in Castleford called Celia's Records, and it was a magnet for teenagers. And you'd save up your pocket money and you'd go buy the latest singles, as we call them then, or 45s. Yeah, like I say, it was just a great place for teenagers, and it was somewhere to go because there wasn't much, when you're in between that strange age where there was not a lot going on for you. And so Celia's Records, on a Saturday afternoon, you go downtown, meet your friends, spend a bit of money on makeup, and go for a coffee and go to Celia's Records and buy the latest single.
If ever I went into Castleford, I would never not go to Castleford without going into G.T. Smith's. Yeah, I loved G.T. Smith's because I loved their pies. Oh, they did absolutely beautiful, wonderful pies. Yeah, their pork pies and their sausage rolls were absolutely to die for. The bakery was at the end of Airedale, so it was all Castleford then, GT Smith's. Oh, and they had the shop at Nottingley, at the hilltop at Nottingley as well, yeah.
I do remember coming to Cass, because I remember I bought my first bike, or my parents bought me my first bike from a bike shop called Rogers. It was on the roundabout, they've demolished it now, but I remember cycling home all the way to Pontefract on my new Rally 3-gear blue bike. That's all I remember about it. But it had a dynamo, so yeah.
Rogers were the place to go, but it didn't only sell bikes, it sold scooters. And I bought a scooter from there in 72. It was really popular. I mean, people come from all over Yorkshire to go there.
Unique, enjoyable.
Interesting, exciting.
I just have a smile on my face, remembering what it was like, because it was a special place. It really was a special place.
Well, I finished school on the Friday and started at Burberry's on the Monday, which in those days that's what you did. You could take your pick of jobs, it's not like it is nowadays.
Mac is what, the main one, then GTs, then there were Burberry's, quite a few people I know used to work at Burberry's, then there were, your little, like, your shops, your supermarkets. Quite a mixture of diverse things to do.
When I finished school, I was hoping to work at the printing works because it was only 4 or 5 doors away from me. But unfortunately, there was no jobs. So the chap who had the printing works, his brother worked for D.C. Graham, landscape gardeners, and he got me a job working as a landscape gardener for D.C. Graham's.
I think I was at school this particular day, and careers come to school, and I said I don't want to be in, because we were ready for leaving school, and no, you've got to go sit in on careers. No, I've just got we've got a game going on school pitch, football. You've got to sit in on this careers. So we were meant to go sit on careers, and it was this chap from Mary Jo's Furniture. I was very glad I was sat on it, and I went and got to interview and all like that, and you had to do an exam then. It was no hard exam, it was just common sense. Anyway, week after, I've been told I've been accepted on this apprenticeship, so that was it then, right, you know what I mean?
We were put into what they called the creche. It was a creche where you had a lady who taught you how to sew. So you were all like cordoned off from the main factory in this area where you were taught the basics of sewing. They taught you the machine, and they also taught you how to hand stitch, and then they determined which area of the factory you'd be assigned. I was a bit of an all-rounder. I was good on the machine and I was good on the hand stitching, so I had jobs in both departments. One of the funny things is we used to, you'd get given homework, you could take them home. So, we all took these Burberry jackets home and then brought them back, and I travelled on train or bus. So, I didn't have my own transport. We used to take them home on the bus or the train. Which, in today's age, you wouldn't even dream of doing something like that.
Well, I left school and went straight up to GT Smith's because, I didn't really like sewing, so I thought, go up to GT Smith's and learn baking, and that's what I did. Oh, everything really. Cakes, didn't do much bread, pies, confectionery, cream, cream room, putting literally graining cakes and tarts and making sponges, packing them, various bits and bobs.
And I went to the youth careers office because my dad wanted me to have an apprenticeship, and there was only one apprenticeship, and that was at a local bakery. So I went to the local bakery when I was 17, learned to use machinery, I make bread, pastries, cakes and all that. And I was a 17-year-old using a machine, which today is unheard of. A 17-year-old can't use a machine, you've got to be 18. But that was before all health and safety and all this came into being.
Moving on then, I joined Castleford Territorial Army, and I had 2 stints there in an army service, and at 10 year. At 10 year with them, it was great with that. Finished up full corporal, dizzy heights of full corporal. I don't think I were officer material, like, you know what I mean? But you never know if I'd have stopped in.
All of a sudden, I had this desire to, because I joined the Territorial Army, and it gave me a taste of military life and that, and I was in Leeds, and I thought I would up by Albion Street. From there I went into the RF information office, and that's where my RF career started. I hadn't told my mum or my dad that I'd been to Careers Information Office, and I told them, and my dad said to me, says, look, make sure it's what you want to do. Says, because once you've signed, says, if you don't like it, you've got to get yourself out.
So I managed to get a job on the council as a gardener, and I worked for the council until I was 50. I started off on what we call on the outside team, going outside, on the outside maintenance, cutting grass and looking after housing estates, wherever there was grass and everything. And then eventually I got the job in the greenhouses, and with 16 greenhouses growing plants and everything. And then we used to grow the bedding plants that went into the flower beds all around the area. But as well as that, we had these greenhouses that were full of the more exotic flowers and bigger flowers that we used to do. When it was the mare, as we used to call it, the mare making, we always used to put on a big show of flowers at the Civic Centre.
Castleford was where my work base was. I was a steel erector at Udens in Castleford. I erected pylons that are still standing. I enjoyed it. Worked there from 1987.
What did you have to wear to go up the pylon? But did you have a harness?
Of course, yes.
And rope and things?
Yes.
Do you remember what colour the hat was that you wore at work?
Like a goldy colour. Well, you had to wear all gear, you know.
You had overalls, didn't you?
Yeah, I wore boots. I also worked in London. I helped in construction the London Eye in 1998. It was completed in December 1999.
And when I first started work, my first wage when I was apprentice, it was just over £5. Of course, I tipped up to my mum, and my mum had given me £2. I was getting the same as I was delivered it newspapers, £2. So what I used to do was I go around collecting money for them that get the papers, and that was at weekend, which I didn't work at weekend, so that got me an extra couple of quid, like. You see, but with me being apprentice with £5 a week, a lot of my mates went to pit, and they were getting £9 a week, you know, which would double my money, like, at that time. But we survived, it was all right.
My first wage was £5. Yeah, £5 one week and £4 the following week, because they rounded it up. So, yeah, you got £5 one week and £4 the following week. But that £5 went a long way.
The worst job we have had, it was not a nice job. You weren't first to do it, but I I did because it was extra pay. You could be out while 11, 12 o'clock at night, then go home and go to bed, and you'd be up at 6:30 for you start at 7:30. But it was extra pay, and I didn't mind that because it was extra holiday money. Before the new invention of these road gritters, we had tractors and trailers, so we had to go to a place called Cinder Lane, put this salt for the roads on the back of the trailers. 2 of us would be at the back of these vehicles and shoveling onto the road and onto the footpath. But it was hard, and then I was glad when they aired the gritters. It cut my wage, but it doesn't matter.
Well, I came up on a holiday and then I went back and then I came back up and stopped and got a job in the glassworks. It was hot, heavy work, hard work. You met and you did your job. If you wanted a wage, you had to do it. I used to sort the bottles and jars, and you had to watch for all the little lines. They had to be thrown out. You had to have clean glass. As it came off the conveyor belts, they rattled together. You could hear glass rattling, and then and they were hot, and you used to have to pick them up, check them, and put them onto the pallets and stack them so high, and then they used to take them away, and you'd do another pallet.
Well, I loved it there because it was easy work, and we used to get about 6 bottles. They used to do whiskey bottles. And you used to roll them, see if there were any cracks out in them, you know what I mean? And it was brilliant. You used to have a light, and if you rolled them on your hands, you could see if there were any cracks in it, on neck or out like that. And it was good.
And I was lucky enough to get an apprenticeship at Pollard Bearings down Ferry Bridge. That meant I went to night school a whole day and 1 night a week, which I really enjoyed going there. I had a proper apprenticeship. I loved my time at Pollard Bearings. I went in the tool room, and it's really precision work, you know. Learned to use all the machines, the lathe, the milling machine, grinding machine, shaper. Really enjoyed my time there. But a job came up at Bagley's, so that meant I would get a 30% rise straight away. So I went from £20 a week to £30 a week, and I left Pollard's after I'd been there about 6 months after coming out of my apprenticeship.
I think because I had my friends with me, it made it better. But you made friends quite easily. Everybody was quite friendly, quite welcoming. One of the reasons I liked doing the hand stitching was you were sat on one big table and there were a lot of older ladies. So the stories that they told you that was part of what you enjoyed, you know, listening to the different stories.